Good afternoon, everyone. Mike Smela, financial educator and advocate and founder of NFI Hunters Inc. Um, Taking a little different view of our money today. Um, most of us are taught and look at our money on a monthly basis or a yearly basis. How much money do we make? Annually. How much money do we make monthly? But let's take a look at uh, a bigger picture, a 30,000. And let's look at what we're going to call as the lifetime capital reserve, or basically, let's take a look at all the money we're going to make during our working lifetime. And what we want to be able to show is where that money goes in most situations. So, assumption here, we're going to look at a husband and wife that are age 35, each making $75,000 a year of income. So they make combined $150,000. Their goal is to retire at age 65. So they've got 30 years of income that we're going to look at. And they ultimately want to be able to retire on, let's say, $100,000 of retirement income. Okay. Now let's also going to make some assumptions, which isn't too far-fetched these days if you're 35 years old and looking at this situation, that we're going to assume that they are going to be able to have no pension income and no Social Security income. Because again, we're just going to look at looking at what they are going to be able to create for themselves outside of anything else, which again, no pension. Who knows what it's going to happen. So again, we're going to look at $150,000 of income at 30 years. So they, over the course of their lifetime, their working 30 years of life, are going to create or bring in what $4.5 million of their lifetime capital reserve. Now, again, to make this simple, we're going to also take a look at it and say that they received all of that income in one lump sum on January 1st, 2016. So basically, this is all of the money that they have to live on for the rest of their lives. They're getting it all right now. Okay, so let's take a look at a few things. The first question becomes, how far is that money going to last? Because obviously we've got things that start draining our wealth from us, whether we look at it on a big picture basis or on a monthly basis. Let's take a look and say, what are we call wealth drains? So let's be very conservative and say over the course of a lifetime, 30% is going to be drained away to taxes. Now, I'm not just talking personal income taxes, but state taxes, sales taxes, all of the taxes that drain our wealth away. I think we're being pretty conservative here on a 30%, but again, is that something that we face every day? Yes, it is. So 30% let's drain away for taxes. What's another one of our wealth drains? Well, what about financed items? Most people spend the majority of their lives paying and financing items, whether it be their home, their autos, their credit cards, student loans. If you're just getting out of school, if you're a medical professional, you absolutely know that, let's say, looking at 30% of wealth drain for student loans, just student loans themselves may be that much. So over the course of a lifetime, again, typically it's actually higher. It's closer to 36 to 38% that actually gets financed. But let's assume at this point we're only 30% over the course of the next 30 years, of the course of our lifetime, your individual lifetime, is going to be drained away for paying principal and interest to other people. Now, what are other wealth drains? Well, obviously, we've got regular old living expenses, cash items, things that we're going to pay just to live. Everything from paying the light bill, the heating bill, food, gas, entertainment. If you have insurances or other things, car repairs, whatever it is, we're going to have, again, let's just assume maybe 30% toward living expenses. So, and this also represents what we call as a lost opportunity cost, because every time a dollar gets drained or leaves our possession, now think about this, every time a dollar leaves our possession, it is forever gone out of our lifetime. Now, we've never known anything but that. So when we go out and pay our taxes, when we pay our financed items, the principal and the interest, when we pay our living expenses, this is all dollars that is never going to be coming back into our lives. Now think about that. Let that sink in for a minute, because again, over the course of our lifetime, whether we're looking at it in one lump sum as we're doing here, or whether we do it on a monthly or a yearly basis, if let's just say 90% of the money that we have coming in leaves our life, that only leaves us with 10%, right? So our lifetime capital reserve gets reduced in this case by $4.5 million, or I'm sorry, by just over $4 million, which leaves in this situation only $450,000 and grow for the next 30 years to get to a point that they can at that point retire with enough income to last them the rest of their lives. Now, $4.5 million is a lot of money. 450,000. And again, here's the other big thing is right now in the United States, the savings rate is maybe at 5%. So again, we're looking at saying, and a lot of financial professionals basically say, hey, pay yourself first, pay yourself 10% off the top. Well, even if you pay yourself 10% off the top, again, that's 90% of the wealth in your life that is getting drained away. Think about that, folks. It's not a lot of money, even if you are saving 10%. And then now let's take a look at it and say, okay, let's say they've got 450,000 and they need to grow that to whatever the amount is to last them from age 65 on. Let's take a look at that. So again, where will that money go? And are there any additional holes in the bucket or potential holes in their bucket that may drain this dollars away? Well, when you put, what we've always been taught to do is, from a foundational standpoint, is to use the stock market as the vehicle or the place to grow our money. How many people out there have 401ks, 403bs? They've got investments. Everything's all about the stock market and about investing to grow our money and our wealth. Well, the thing we need to look at, folks, is the cost of wealth the cost of loss and what that does to our future is something we really need to take a closer look at. Because how many down years, if you've only got $450,000 to last you and we have to grow it for the next 30 years, how many down years can you truly afford? How many 2008s, 2009s, or 2000s can you afford to lose or to even risk losing with that money? Because again, that 450,000 is it. There ain't no more. If you also have your monies in qualified accounts, 401ks, 403bs, those types of accounts. The other thing we need to look at, or another thing that we need to look at, is what are the taxes that are going to be due down the road? Now, again, we've always been taught, right, wrong, or indifferent, that it's good to put money into qualified plans because you defer the taxes. And you put them in and the money grows and you're not going to be taxed until down the road. Well, that may or may not be a good thing. What do I mean by that? Let's think about it this way. With the federal deficit, with all of the costs involved with running our government and how deeply in debt our government is, who controls the taxes? Our government. Now, if the government is that deeply in debt, what do you think is going to happen with taxes in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years? Do you think that tax rates are going to go up, down, or stay the same? I don't know. Neither do you. The question becomes, what happens? And one thing that we really aren't taught is that when we postpone paying the taxes, we also postpone the tax calculation. What happens if the taxes down the road increase? Well, again, when we're at a point in time when we are living on our, quote, investments, if taxes go up, all of a sudden we may be in a worse situation than we were at the beginning. So we need to look at the strategies and the thought processes involved about when to pay taxes versus putting our money into vehicles that will grow, that are let's say post-tax dollars now, and then putting them into vehicles that down the road, not only will they accumulate money tax-free or without taxes, but then you have the ability to take them out without taxes. Okay, so different thought processes, but again, we want to look at taxes being a potential wealth drain on that. And then the third thing that we need to take into account is when we have monies in investments, obviously there are going to be costs and fees involved, and that drains monies away. And even if your money does grow in these investments, okay, your fees actually end up increasing in the volume of fees. Because if you've got, let's say, $450,000 and you're paying, let's just even say you're paying 1% on that in terms of fees, that's what, $4,500? Well, if you then have $1 million in fees, that actual dollar amount of fees, it actually increases over time. So if, number one, we're going to assume that you're going to be in growing your money, which again, with losses, that isn't an assumption that you can make, but also the fees over the course of time reduces that amount as well. So the questions we really need to start asking ourselves is, number one, how much can you really afford to risk losing? Again, this is all the money they've got. And when we look at it, whether we do it on a 30,000 foot view or whether we look at it on a view from a yearly basis or monthly basis, we have to ask ourselves the same question. And how much control can you afford to give away? If this is all the fun, and that it needs to absolutely grow for you in order to get you to a point where you can retire, how much control can you afford to give away? When we turn our money over to investment advisors, to money managers, who ends up with the control? They do. Who ends up with all the risk? We do. Is that something that you really want to have happen? I don't know. I'm not saying do it or don't do it. I'm just saying I think it's worth asking those questions and seeing whether if today's line of thought as far as how to build a solid foundation is truly in your best interest or not. So rather than focusing on growing the leftover money, let's start looking at focusing on reducing these barriers to wealth. Okay, so what if we had the ability to change the focus, keep in control more of the money that is in our lives? Again, remember, they had $4.5 million of a lifetime capital reserve, or lifetime dollars that are coming into their being. What if, again, instead of focusing on trying to grow our leftover monies, what if we learn to create strategies? We learn to create vehicles that will plug some of the holes in our financial buckets, or in some cases, eliminate some of the holes in our financial bucket, or cases actually even, and this may sound a little bit odd, but reverse the flow of money from away from us back into our being. Now, again, we want to think about that for a minute. Imagine the ability to, number one, totally eliminate market loss. Is that something that can be done? Absolutely can be done. And there are vehicles and strategies that have been in place for literally centuries that never put your money at risk of loss and continue to have very growth. Sound too good to be true? Well, again, we don't know what we don't know, people. So keep your minds open, and you may learn that history, it's not as difficult as we think. Okay? Imagine being able to greatly reduce fees and costs. Imagine having the ability to actually reverse the flow of money so you can literally become your own system of financing. So instead of paying interest to other people, you actually create a system that enables you to pay interest back to yourself. And imagine using vehicles that instead of paying debt for 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years of your life in some cases, you have the ability, without changing your payments or your lifestyle, to pay that debt off in a third of the time, a half of the time, a quarter of the time. Imagine what that would do to keep more monies in our pocket, which then we can use to grow and leverage even more efficiently. So folks, what you've seen today is that we need to start thinking differently about our money. Okay? We need to empower ourselves. We need to create different thoughts. We need to create different motivations. We also need to learn different information, and we need to implement very different financial vehicles so that when you have the right thinking, when you are educated in the proper ways, and when you implement the right vehicles, fortunately, what ends up happening is you end up creating a lifetime of financial success and empowerment, which is exactly what we all need and deserve to do. My name is Mike Smela, founder of Financial Educator and Advocate, NFI Hunters Inc. I hope you enjoyed this today. We'll continue to educate you. So you guys have a great day. Take care.